wonder how the car stereos get so boring. Get in, I'll show you what I mean. Now sure, this thing sounds great with its powerful inbuilt amp, DSP, EQ and all that good stuff, but the design, if you can call a touchscreen with no discernible features a design, leaves a bit to be desired. Now it didn't always used to be this way. Car stereos used to have a bit of personality. They were unique and catered perfectly to the aesthetic of the car that they were in. They were tactile and had buttons and switches and flip-out screens, and some even had dolphins. So surely there has to be another way, a way that combines the aesthetic purpose of an old-style stereo with the fidelity and quality of a modern one. So I want to make a custom head unit for my 350Z because this one that's been in there for a while, as good as it sounds, makes me sad because I don't like having a touchscreen in a 2004 show car. It's not period correct, and to be honest, I miss the buttons and switches and the tactile nature that you used to get with a head unit like this. This is the original one from the 350Z, and obviously it's a bit dated now. It's got a CD and a tape deck in. I don't even own any CDs and some tapes, but it looks perfect for the car. You know, the head unit is obviously designed specifically for it, and it's got all the tactile stuff, the switches and the knobs that I like having in a car. So I need to make something that looks like this but sounds like this. I'm not afraid to say that making a full custom head unit is beyond my level of expertise, but I think I can achieve something that is basically this being powered by and controlled by this. Because I've been thinking about it, and my car has a steering wheel remote in it that, you know, lets me change the volume and skip the tracks and stuff for this. And in order for that to work, it uses this little box thing, which converts the signals so that this head unit can understand it via this little steering wheel remote wire. So if I can simulate another one of these that I can control in any way that I want and send the signals down into here in the same way, then maybe I can make this thing control this thing. Because these old head units, as well as being massive and weighing about the same as a dying neutron star, I can see if I peek through the outside hedge here, it's just like a circuit board. And I think the circuit board just senses all the button impresses. So if I can sense those button presses, simulate what this little thing does, and then send those button press commands to this, and at the same time get rid of this whole CD tape section and instead get this head unit and have it in the space behind the fascia, then I can have the best of both worlds. All the sound quality and fidelity and EQ and all that stuff from here, but the looks of this thing. But I have no idea if this process is even going to work, so just need to start taking this one apart and then see if we can control that using like an Arduino. If we can do that, then that's 90% of the way there. So I guess we need to start taking some stuff apart. It's always nice when you're right. On the back of here is just a circuit board with 7 screws in it. I reckon if we take those 7 screws off, this thing is gonna pop right out. Yeah, that is just a circuit board with some switches on it, and by the looks of things, some little LEDs which light the buttons up, and then the screen. This may well end up being easier than expected. I found this article where someone's already done it for a Kenwood stereo, and it seems to suggest that the message format it requires is the NEC protocol, which is what you use in TV remotes, only inverted with no carrier, which means we need to pull voltages down rather than pull them up. And it also seems to suggest that the Kenwood address code is B9,
and we have a bunch of command codes. So assuming these are all correct and have stayed consistent across Kenwood brands over the years, this could be everything we need. Let's write this code, build a little circuit, hook it up and see what happens. Time for the moment of truth. Plug this in. We have power. It's a good start. Get to playing. Via Bluetooth is my all-time favourite song, Like and Subscribe by the Lost Souls. If I press this button, hopefully it's going to pause. It's not pausing. Damn. I thought that was just going to work. Serial print saying anything? GPIO 35 input only. I'm trying to output the NEC command out of an input only pin. Now in pin 32, but again playing like and subscribe. Try again. Button press. Oh, it's paused. Unpause. Yeah, pause. Unpause. Pause. Unpause. Ah, it works. That's amazing. That's so simple. Proof of concept has now been officially proven. Now that I know that this is just a PCB and that the message sending protocol that controls these head unit or works, I can actually go about making a replacement PCB. But I need to consider a couple of things, like the fact that this head unit has got way more buttons on it than I have any need for my radio. Volume can do volume. This audio button can be repurposed as a play pause. Track seek up and down can be forwards and backwards, but tune and CD changer and all that stuff is not going to be needed. But as I make all of these gauges for my 350Z, these are all interconnected with a CAN bus system that also connects to things like my underglow and my interior lights and starlights and all that kind of stuff. So I can control them all through a networked CAN bus that I'm building in the car. So I think it'll be a good idea if these buttons that aren't used for the stereo anymore are repurposed to control other things around the car. Like this 1 to 6 along the bottom can be used to turn on and off the various lighting systems, whereas the ones across the top, these CD tape AM and these tuner ones, can all just be used as the menu control system for changing the way that my gauges look. I think by putting them in here and not relying on touchscreens further adds that element of period correctness to the car. Also, it's a bit cooler, I think, if you're able to go and press these buttons and like change the color of your gauges. That would be really, really wicked. But other than that, I think the specification is actually quite easy. We've got roughly 24 buttons and 24 LEDs. We've got this one little rotary for the volume and the screen. And I could quite easily build this in KiCad, send it off to my friends over at PCBWay and have a complete turnkey solution produced, which has got everything integrated into the board. But it's going to take a few weeks and I'm impatient. So I think the faster way is going to be to create a mounting board that I can then use my existing ultimate gauge boards that I've already created, which have got the CAN bus integration, they've got the LCD driver, and they've got I2C ports, which I can use with a couple of additional I/O expanders, which I'm going to have to buy, and then mount them all to this board and then just use the board to do the traces for the lights and the buttons. It'll keep it really simple, and it means that I can get this whole thing manufactured in a couple of days as opposed to a couple of weeks. So I guess it's just a case of finding the replacement buttons I want to use. Should be pretty easy. They're just standard 6x3mm momentary switches. A replacement one of these twisty things. Finding the replacement LEDs, which are NeoPixel addressable. And then that's it. So time to take some measurements, take some photographs, and super accurately reproduce this thing in KiCad. It's going to be a fun day. That's me this morning going, oh, it'll only take a couple of hours. That was at just around 9 a.m. It's now 9 p.m. It's taken a lot longer than I thought, but this little design is done. I think I've got everything ready to go. So I guess the only thing left to do with this is send it off to the sponsor of this video, PCBWay. Every now and again, I get an email from them, like I did earlier this month, saying something cool. This month it was, Andy, we know you really like purple. Because, yeah, I quite like purple. Throughout all of October, purple board upgrades are free. So let's make this board in purple. I think that'd be really cool. If you want to do this kind of project for yourself or a similar thing, you know, making a mounting board, if you use the link in my description, you can get yourself $5 off your first set of boards. And something like this with no components on it is only $5 anyway. So you're going to get it just for the cost of the postage. You can't say much fairer than that. So I'm going to get this one sent off. And then tomorrow, whilst we wait for the boards to arrive, we'll get on with a couple of the other bits. Well, this is Tilly, and Tilly has come to make sure that the quality of the next bit is done properly, because we need to, like I say, change the lettering on this head unit display. And I say it quite nonchalantly, like it's super easy, but I don't think it's going to be too bad. And I do have a plan, because if I take all of this back section off, all the buttons will just fall out. And when you look at these buttons, they're not actually black. They're white with a black coating on the top. And so you can see when you hold it up to a light, that's where the light shines through and makes the button light up. So if I remove all of the black coating and leave myself with just a white button and then recoat them, I can then use one of these machines in order to put the letters or a symbol or whatever I want on the button instead. Similarly, this little grey bit that covers the back of the CD tray, I could very simply just cut a piece of black acrylic, stick it in there, and it'd be done. But I think 3D modeling and printing something that uses the existing screw holes is a much cooler solution. So we're going to try doing this, and I like to set myself challenges and learning new things. So I'm actually going to use one of my machines that I've never used before, the Anycubic Cobra S1, in order to 3D print the backing plate in ABS, and the laser attachment on my Carvera Air to engrave the new text and symbols into the buttons. It's going to be a little bit of a interesting learning afternoon for me. How smooth today's process goes is anybody's guess. Well, for a first ever test print on a new machine, that has come out real nice. And it fits perfectly where it's supposed to go. I got all the paint removed from these, and I was about to just paint them black before I do the lasering, and I suddenly realized, what if the laser process doesn't work? Because there's another way which I could do, which is to make vinyl stencils on the Cricut before I paint it, but I'd need to know that before I've already painted them, so I need to run a test on the laser just to make sure it doesn't, you know, engrave and mash right into all of my buttons and ruin them. So I've very crudely painted this Celebrations lid with some black acrylic paint. And hopefully I can run a test which allows me to just remove the top layer of paint and just see the red underneath, but not actually damage it. I think it's going to take a few goes and trying the laser as a few different, you know, percentages of brightness, because yeah, this could go very wrong. I think it's pretty safe to say that the values after 10% are a little bit too intense with the laser, because I just melted straight through the box. Let's try it again from 1% up to 10 and see what that does. Yeah, so 1 to 10% are much more reasonable. Something around 4 I think looks pretty good, but it does raise another problem. The issue becomes, how the hell do I make sure that these are all orientated correctly on the bed before I laser into them? Because actually centering the laser where I want it for each bit of text is going to be really difficult. The only way I can think is to create a 3D printed base that utilizes the holes in the back of these as like a mounting spot, and then create a template where I know exactly where they are all relative. The problem is, if this is even like 0.5 millimeter out, it's going to be really obvious. So yeah, tricky, but I'm pretty sure I can come up with a decent solution. The last 48 hours have been painful, and I don't know what the last thing I recorded was, because I've been trying to figure out how to make my laser completely remove the paint over the area where I want the button to be, but also at the same time not burn the button. Because if you burn the button, it tarnishes, it soots, it becomes black. And because it's a white button, it's very noticeable. And I think there's such a fine line between erasing the paint and then burning the plastic underneath it. It's almost not feasible when the thickness of your paint varies by microns. And I've been trying dozens and dozens of ways. I've got all of these different tiny little dolphins cut out of various celebration lid toppers that I've been putting paint on and then trying to erase just the paint. And I've come to the conclusion that it ain't the way. So I've been thinking, okay, well, what's another way of doing it? And obviously the Cricut came to mind, using the Cricut Maker in order to create stencils. But the Cricut Maker just can't do the stencils accurately enough. They're 3mm high bits of really, really small text, and because it does it with a blade, it's just not accurate enough. So what? So what's the solution? Well, why don't I try getting some non-PVC vinyl, because if it's PVC and you put it underneath a laser, it releases chloride gas, which that'll kill you. And then putting the vinyl straight onto the top of a button and then using the laser to cut away the actual button negative, the menu or the word or the symbol or whatever it is. And then I can use this as a stencil to paint over. And I tried using the vinyl and then painting it, and it actually creates quite a decently sharp line when you put it away. So I think there's a way of doing it with this. And I've just tried putting down the word menu on one button, and it bodes well. It actually looks really good. So I'm going to send it. I'm just going to paint it and then remove this with a really sharp knife just whilst the paint is ever so slightly damp, and see where we end up. There's got to be a solution. I think this might be a good one, but what a couple of days just while I wait for a circuit board. Trying to paint some stupid letters on some stupid buttons for a stupid stereo. So it turns out the laser can indeed cut the vinyl for the stencils with sufficient accuracy that they look really good, but actually getting them centered bang in the middle of the buttons is tricky, even when you can move the laser start point in fragments of a millimeter. And I just don't trust myself doing it that way. But I do trust my eyes and my hands and a simple magnifying glass. So instead, I'm going to use the laser to cut out all of the symbols and the text straight onto a piece of vinyl and then transfer them by hand to the buttons so that I know that everything is perfectly centered. Then I can paint them with an airbrush and just layer it up ever so slowly and then keep testing it with a little LED behind until the black is appearing completely opaque. And then remove the vinyl whilst the paint is still ever so slightly wet, which means it should leave a nice sharp edge. I think we're nearing the end of this step, but I thought that 2 steps ago. So you never know with stuff like this. Trial and error. Trial and error. Well, it's basically midnight on a Saturday night, and I've just finished the buttons, and they look great, but they look wrong. Turns out the paint that I was using is more matte than I would have liked. I would like these to be more semi-gloss, so this isn't going to do, and I'm going to just redo them all. And I'm not too bothered about that because at the end of the day, I've now identified a process that works really well. So, you know, I can make this again. It's probably only going to be another 4 or 5 hours work to redo them, and I've got some time before the PCB arrives. But frustrating to have to redo it, but it'll be worth it. We're not going to look at me do the whole process again. We're just going to jump to all of this being done, but yeah. Wah wah. With the fascia complete, I can now move on to the bit that should be relatively pain-free for me. I know I've said that a couple of times during this, but I don't envisage there being many difficulties in the programming side of this thing. I'm going to actually do it in 2 steps because there's 2 distinct things that need to be built in order to make this whole thing work. One is the inputs and the LEDs and making sure that the button presses are actually all feeding back into the ESP32 correctly. and the screen. I think the screen is its own beast. The whole device can exist and live and work without the screen at all. The screen's really a nice to have. So I'm going to worry about all the physical connections first. And then after that's all done and I can verify that all the lights work and all the buttons work and all my inputs and my outputs work, then I'll worry about exactly what's going on the screen. So I'm going to make a test circuit. It's time to start soldering some headers and some jumpers onto actual components. We'll put them together in a breadboard, run some tests with codes coming in and going out. And then when the PCB arrives later on today, we'll start constructing the thing for real. Getting dangerously close to being done. Well, the creative chaos has certainly landed in full effect. It's always the way. But this is all going actually pretty smoothly. All of the mounting boards, the expanders, my ultimate gauge board and the power protection board all mounted up absolutely perfectly. The holes are all perfectly in line. The thing that I've made to hold the screen seems to be in the exact right position. And all the buttons have gone on fine and seem to be lined up exactly where they need to be lined up. I've put some code onto the ultimate gauge board and I'm successfully serial printing which button has been pressed, so that all bodes well. The rotary is all working. Everything's really good. There were a couple of small teething issues which I've got to work around. One is that the clearance, because of the tape deck bit that was raised, I've had to cut that bit of plastic off. And even with that bit of plastic cut off, it was ingressing on the board and causing the board, when it goes into its mounting clips, to kind of flex in that kind of direction, which isn't good, obviously. And it also meant that the middle of the board was raised ever so slightly, and a couple of the buttons along the middle of the fascia subsequently weren't reaching the buttons that they needed to press. So I've had to sacrifice the tape deck back bit. I wanted to keep it with the Bose logo and everything on there because I thought it was quite cool, but in the end I'm going to have to just make something that fits inside that gap. Again, not a big deal. It'll just be a simple block that I just 3D print, and also the CD tray backer piece that I made that goes in here. The mounting screws are ingressing on that in the same way and pulling it away from these buttons at the top of the display. So again, I need to make another version of this, which has just got a bit of the back panel missing. But other than that, everything's going quite smoothly. Though I forgot one thing on the circuit board for this stereo controlling task. Can you guess what that one thing was? It was the output that goes from this to the other stereo. Didn't include it. The whole point of this entire project, and I didn't put it on the board. Fortunately, it's only a resistor and a transistor. It should be pretty simple. But yeah, what a thing to forget in this entire project. I would have liked it to have been mounted on the board, but hey-ho. So I've just got to pop the LEDs in, test all that, make sure they're working as expected. But otherwise, other than like all the screen design, I think the overwhelming majority of this is going to be done today. Famous last words, but I've made a mission critical mistake. And it's the fact that, can't believe I didn't think of this earlier, but NeoPixel LEDs can't be driven by I/O expanders. So how the hell am I going to do this? I'm going to need a separate board that is dedicated just for the LEDs. Actually, I have a little box of boards sent to me by Seed Studios. I'm pretty sure in here, yeah. I've got a tiny little canvas breakout board. And with that, there should be, yeah. So a couple of their tiny little ESP32 type boards. And these just like pop together and be a tiny little solution with canvas. And because of the way I've designed my ultimate gauge board, when it's got the canvas and the power coming in through the power protection board that goes into the ultimate gauge board, it'll then daisy chain and come out. So I can daisy chain out of this board straight into here. And then this can output to the LEDs. This could also solve the problem of where do I put the communication to the actual stereo. That can output from this as well. And then I just, you know, mount this somewhere on the board. You know when I said it's all going to be nice and simple? Yeah. Maybe if I spent less time looking at skylines and more time preparing a code, then I'd get this done better first time. Well, at least I have a solution, I think. This will be fine. It'll be fine. Not ideal, but it'll be fine. Okay, this looks like chaos, but like and subscribe is playing again. The wire is connected up to the transistor into the resistor, which goes into this little Seed Studios ESP32C3, and its canvas connector is connected to this canvas network, and there are a few buttons on here that do radio related things. I'm hoping this one under here, which is play pause, plays and pauses. Let's click. Yes, play and pause. Or the other way around. Pause. Play. What about the volume knob under here? This is the rotary, so if I press it, it should mute. Yeah. So pressing that mutes and unmutes. Twist it. Takes the volume up and down. And then I've got next track and previous track. Let's do previous. Yep, goes back to the start and next. Perfect. And then this one at the top, the power button. You can see with the gauges, it takes them into like a minimal mode. So it just gets rid of all the UI, which means despite the few hiccups along the way, this is all working. What's really neat about this is now that I've kind of got the system working and passing information around properly, is that Seed Studio is just looking out for a canvas ID. So anything that I build on this network can send 411 and then a command like 01 is play pause, 02 is next track, 03 is previous track, so on. And anything can be used to control the stereos. I could do gesture control or voice control or, you know, something I haven't even thought of yet. So I'm going to do some simple stuff on the screen, hook up some of the buttons, and let's jump 2 days into the future and take a look at this thing in the 350Z doing what it should do best, playing music.
Just before we take a look at this thing in its final space within the car, just got to say a massive thanks to PCBWay for sponsoring this video and providing the circuit board. Worked beautifully. Also to Carvera Air for providing me the Carvera Air, which I was able to use to fabricate the buttons on this, and to Anycubic for the 3D printer, which has been instrumental in making this thing finally possible. And to all of the members, new and old, that support this channel, I deeply appreciate your support, and you really help me continue this journey of making cool stuff for the cars. But without further ado, let's take a look. Oh my God. Take a look at that. It all works. And in here is the screen. It's the only screen I really need. I don't need a full massive screen here because I've got one there. But what are we playing? Come Baby Come. Let's see how many. We'll just do a few seconds because otherwise copyright's going to be a problem. But Turn it off. Yeah, so that all works. And then here we've got radio, color. Let's go for blue. We're currently purple. Blue. And then we can change the brightness. This is the LED brightness. Might be difficult to see in the daytime, but yeah, LED brightness goes up and down. There will be stuff in here for, I'll go to next, for the gauges. So the background, the needle, and the ticks, that'll be to control the design on all of these gauges. If you're excited to see that stuff in a Need for Speed style, make sure you subscribe to the channel because it's next. But otherwise we can exit the menu. We've got this Kenwood style, guess it looks a bit like a spectrum analyzer. It doesn't actually do anything right now. It's just a background image that can be a placeholder. The power button turns the lights and the screen on and off. Home just goes home. When I'm in a menu, it will reset that back to home. Brightness here takes the screen brightness down. Bit tricky to see on camera, but definitely does it. And then if we briefly unpause this again a sec. Volume drops. Mute. Unmute. Next. Perfect. Everything works as it should. There are some iterations that I want to do to this thing to make it better. Firstly, and most importantly, I would like to make a new version of the PCB with all of the parts integrated into it rather than having them as modules that you attach to the board. Doing that means I get rid of the second ESP requirement that actually sends the information to the stereo and to the NeoPixels, because I can free up a couple of pins because I don't need touch on the screen. And then I can share the schematic and the bill of materials for that. So anybody who wants to remake it for their own head unit can do so. You can just basically use the same schematic and all the same parts, but in a different style. Also, there's a couple of bits on this that don't do anything yet. The dolphin button, I totally intend to start some dolphin animations on the little screen. I haven't had time to do that yet. I wanted to get this finished and released at least with a wave 1. Similarly, the 1 to 6 buttons don't do anything yet. They're going to control all of these lighting systems that I've got around the car. So that's still to do. All of this just because I hate touchscreens. Now, one last point of note. So everybody who's been a follower of this channel for a long time, yes, this video has taken me several weeks to produce, but it's because not only have I been making the thing, but I've been trying to develop this new filming style, these bigger, grander, overarching projects that show you the entire process rather than just one little myopic bit of it. I owe a lot of thanks to my partner Alice, who's been filming for me, to my sounding board on Discord, who have been feeding back on like this new creative style and how I'm going to be producing videos going forwards, and to all of you for sitting through and watching this first foray into a new style of video for Garage Tinkering. I hope you've enjoyed it, because this is how I'm going to be making videos going forwards. No little super niche looks at like one thing, big, grand projects that only get bigger and grander from here. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed it, and just as it starts to rain, it's time to wrap this video up. I hope that something good happens to you today, and I'll see you next time. Well, whenever, I guess. Take it easy. Bye-bye.